So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:02. Welcome, everyone. I hope it's been a good summer. Nice to see everyone again. Just a few points of order to start. I'm sure many of you are aware, but for those of you who aren't, Lynn is absent and attending to a family emergency, and Michelle Tverge is our acting superintendent and will be doing the superintendent's report this evening. And then I also just wanted to give a shout out to Courtney, who's not here, for this fantastic system that she's come up with for our board reports. I was a little nervous when I saw there was a kind of a manual that went with it. I'm not really a manual person, but I figured it out, and I'm not terribly tech savvy, and it's really brilliant. So I just wanted to thank and acknowledge her efforts around this new agenda situation. It's superb. So that said, on our consent agenda, we have no policies today, so just the prior minutes. Any discussion, questions about the prior minutes? Then I'll take a motion to accept.
I'll move to approve.
Thanks, Polly. By roll, Kat? Can she hear more than?
Mary, can you hear me?
Oh, now I can, yeah.
Because I can't hear you.
Oh, you.
So I don't know what.
So there's a motion on the table to accept the prior minutes.
Sorry, the prior minutes?
Yes.
Okay, and yeah, I don't think it's the mess because I can barely hear Morgan either.
Okay, well, okay, I'm not taking the next step, so.
Aye.
Thanks.
Aye.
Yeah, and Erin? Aye. Great. Okay, I don't think there's any need to reprioritize the agenda for the evening. Looks like we have no in-person visitors or public comment. Anyone joining us?
No visitors on Zoom.
Great. Okay. So Morgan, that brings us to you with the financial and business report.
Okay, I had sent out your financial update. I think this one actually made it into your packet. For the supervisory union, unlike your two districts, I'm sending you all of the reports for all of the grants as well as for the general fund. For most of those grants, I have not gone in and put in budgets yet. In a lot of cases, we're waiting for grants to be approved before I do that. So I think even more so than in your local districts, there's really nothing yet here to see. I will give you a heads up on the special ed front that we did get our first census block grant, which is the big pot of money that's replacing some of the smaller pots of money. And it looks like it's coming in higher than what they had projected last year. So we have a little bit of breathing room there.
Okay.
It kind of comes in two batches. One is that census block grant, which we now know the number for the year, and the other one is a reimbursement. So that's a guess that we make at the beginning of the year. That one may still come in higher or lower depending on what kind of expenses we have. But it's good to start the year with good news.
Yeah.
So are there any questions on that?
Morgan, where are the grants and what are the amounts? Which page?
They are going to start in on page, starting on page 7, and they're going throughout those. Each page break would be a different grant.
Gotcha. Okay, I see that. All right, thank you.
Central office location update, I put that in your report. The only thing I will tip you to is by September, I of course meant October.
Of course.
We'll see
Okay,
how that goes.
okay.
And then my only action item for you, if you're ready to take action, is that we have the proxies for the VISBIT annual meeting, which is held at Lake Maury with the Superintendents and School Board Association annual meetings. This is one where the only real action is to elect 2 new officers who run unopposed, because they also can be grabbing people who are willing. You've got the ability either to designate VISBIT your proxy to vote on your behalf, or designate a person to vote on your behalf. Mary is going to Lake Maury this year. I believe Lynn is going as well. So you could either designate one of those two, or any other board members who are planning to attend, or give it to VISBIT.
Is there anybody else planning on going? No. Are you, Erin? No. So I would motion to give Mary authority to vote, and if Mary were unable to attend, I would give Lynn the authority to vote. That's my motion.
And so that motion should read, and I can send this to you, Amanda,
Okay.
to appoint Mary Niles as authorized representative to appear and vote on its behalf at any and all meetings of the members of the Vermont School Board Insurance Trust or any adjournment thereof.
All right, so we'll do that by roll. Kat,
She is having sound trouble still.
all right. Sarah, Erin,
Aye.
Polly,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
And actually, Kat was drugged,
Okay.
Okay.
so I'll let you know if she makes it back in.
Okay.
And that's it, Morgan?
That is it for me. I'm gonna jump in on one of Michelle's items, but unless you have any questions, my work here is done.
All right, sounds good. So that brings us to the superintendent report. Michelle?
All right, so as Mary mentioned, I'm filling in for Lynn, so bear with me on this. I believe you all have her board notes, and first on the list is personnel for hiring. It's a long list. So,
Yes, it is.
So Jennifer Burns for special educator, Fenna Miller, special educator, Adria Parent, special educator, Bobby Joe Capone, special educator, Cassandra Schmidt, early childhood special educator, Marianne Sanborn, math interventionist at Richard Elementary, Sarah Fortin, social emotional learning interventionist and coach at Berkshire, Bridget Adams, family engagement coordinator at Munisburg High School, Samantha Bushy, an SLP para, Andrea LaRush, a BT para, Samantha Brunel, a BT para, Catherine West, a BT para behavior technician, Mary Westcomb, food service in Bakersfield, Joyce Dodd, food service in Montgomery, Lori Lange, food service at Munisburg Elementary, Margie Barabee, food service, Richford High School, Haley Paquette, LEAP site coordinator in Bakersfield, Michaela Bean, LEAP site coordinator in Berkshire, and then Melanie Gross is moving full-time to Richford Elementary as the family engagement coordinator. I believe I need a motion.
So, do you need a motion? Not on the paras,
So the
The
license
license.
stuff.
just for the licensed staff, yeah, right, okay. So. Okay. Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve the hiring of the listed licensed staff.
Great.
Can I read that? Listed licensed staff instead of other names.
Do we have Kat back?
Do, but I don't think with Sarah still.
Okay. Sarah,
Aye.
Erin,
Aye.
Polly,
Yeah.
Mary is an aye.
Okay. Next is resignations. Anne Whitney, which was a ELL teacher, is breaking contract. Nicole Corrigan Fair, who's a special educator. Kurt Bentley, food service, and Pam Royer. food service.
And we don't need to take action on that.
No, I think
No,
that's
it's
just informational.
And I was gonna say, I thought that was on a previous list, yeah.
And then we have open positions, quite a few open positions. I'll just review. There's looking for special educators, behavior analysts, 3 SLPs, middle school reading specialist, literacy interventionist, math interventionist, occupational therapist assistants, a therapeutic social worker, a school psychologist, social emotional learning coordinator, half-time family engagement coordinator for Richford High School, an ELL teacher, special ed substitutes, regular substitutes for teachers, nurses, custodians, food service. Jamie, I'm not sure if I'm missing any extras since then. Classroom teachers.
Well,
Do we
this
have-
is just for SU.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so definitely still openings. Okay, the second on the list is our continuous improvement plan. One of our federal requirements is to develop a continuous improvement plan that reflects our goals and spending priorities. This is inclusive of our federal grants and COVID recovery funds. Then I'll look to the board to make a motion to approve our CIP. I don't know if you have anything you need to add to that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Any questions?
Okay, yeah.
I think you'll recognize
Yeah.
the goals in the
Yeah.
CIP, because they are also the board goals, and there's also a direct connection to our pandemic.
Well, less a question and more just a reflection that it's so clear the amount of kind of thought and time that's gone into creating it. So I just wanted to thank you for it. It looks excellent and very comprehensive.
So there are some areas, yes, it does, for sure, that don't have anything in the human material and physical resources section. Is that like, for instance,
Oh, we've got one.
yeah, like in the equity supports one, is that because it's still being developed or?
Hold that,
Like-
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
So on page 4 of the 8, where it's talking about equity supports, Polly's saying that in the human material and physical resource supporting implementation column, there's not anything listed. But maybe it's not relevant or it's just not totally.
So those actually went into those schools' school-wide plans.
Oh, Gotcha.
The equity support designations,
so it's detailed out.
some of the schools have equity support designations and they have school-wide plans, that they had to include their equity support, information in directly.
Got you. Okay, yeah, that's
All
good.
right, super. So any other discussion about the continuous improvement plan? All right, so I'll make the motion to approve the CIP. I roll, aye. Erin?
Aye.
Polly?
Hi.
Mary is an aye. I'm assuming we do not have Pat here.
Not yet.
Okay. Right.
Okay. The third thing is the behavior technicians. We have centralized the behavior technician roles in the supervisory union. And the reason that we recently made that shift is the behavior technicians are assigned to a student as a one-to-one. And we were finding that students were moving schools, but the behavior technician could not move schools with a particular student because they were building-based employees. And that became very challenging for the RISE program and the STEPS program and the Trail House to be able to shift people. And now that staffing has become more challenging, we want to be able to cross-train people so that if there are certain people out in the RISE program, they can go help in the TAP program and vice versa. And we couldn't do that unless they were SU employees, so we shifted to make them SU employees, just the behavior technicians. So I just wanted to share that information. And then, this is, I think Morgan, you're gonna help a little bit on this one, but Lynn is recommending a bus route from Enosburg High School to Richford High School in the morning and a return run at the end of the day. This will allow students from Enosburg to access Richford Junior Senior High School, and it will also allow Richford Junior Senior High School to be a viable option for Sheldon and Bakersfield students to choose Richford in the future.
So I can give you a little background on that, and Kat does seem to be on now. So, when we undertook the transportation study, one of the things that we had them look at was whether we could get any kid from any of our 6 towns to either of the high schools on a regular route. They they said that it was possible to be prohibitively expensive to do that, and it would require some bell schedule changes. We talked about trying to pull together a subgroup sometime this summer to look at that, and to also look at what expanding busing for the after school program might look at. And frankly, nobody at the offices have the bandwidth to pull that together. But Lynn did have some conversations with Beth O'Brien, principal of Richford High School, and there are a handful of students from those outlying towns who can get themselves to Enosburg and then could catch a bus if we offered it from Enosburg to Richford and then back again. It is likely that they would miss a little bit of the beginning and the end of the day at Richford High School, but Beth seemed to feel like she could make the schedule work to accommodate that. And so we asked Carousel to give us a price to consider this as a 1-year trial. They put a price tag of $150 a day for the round trip for that, which we can't do on a taxi. It's a fair chunk of change, but it's probably the cheapest option we have.
A taxi, if you want a reference, we checked to go from Enosburg to Richford for our similar programs was $300 a day.
Oh. And they feel like they have the staff to support that added route?
So I believe what they're gonna do is one of those incoming routes, when they drop off at the high school, that same driver and bus will just continue. So it'll be, an extra hour or two of work for that driver, but
Okay.
it wouldn't be another bus.
Okay.
Great.
Right?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So then I think we would want a motion,
Yes.
supporting the addition of an Enosburg Richford route for this year.
What do you think, Sarah and Erin?
I just wonder what that means then for students who don't know about it yet, and that becomes an issue. Is it gonna be, are there students ready to ride? Are we paying for something that isn't, because it hasn't been advertised, it isn't an option right now?
We have not advertised it, and to be frank, I haven't talked with Lynn about how we might do that. I suspect that the principal in Richford will be pretty willing to get the word out pretty quickly on that if it's an option. And so we may see a few more kids this year. And we do see a little bit of change every year in that September, October timeframe as people sort out where they're ending up in high school. So potentially we could get a few more.
And outside of the possibility that it might draw in more full-time high schoolers to Richford who wouldn't otherwise go because now, they don't have transportation there. In the regular day-to-day, are there high schoolers that access a particular activity or a single class? I mean, that's not really relevant here because you can't just go for a singular opportunity.
I would say that it's not yet relevant. It might be the building blocks for doing something like that. But that's tied into schedules.
Yeah.
And I think the work that the 2 high schools are doing now seems to be more on virtual opportunities, allowing some sharing of resources that way. But down the road, if you can make the schedules work, you can certainly have kids doing Lotsie here every other day or programs like that.
Yeah. So really, the driving force behind it is to potentially pull some students who might like to access Ridgeford as their full-time high school, and transportation is the limiting factor to making that happen. So I mean, so Aaron does have a point that if being this close to the start of the year, it may not, and so what if there are 0 kids riding that bus? As soon as we make this motion, is the
We'll use
route?
the bus.
I have
We'll use the
multiple
bus
students
for our
that
purpose.
Yeah.
our programs
Okay.
that I'm like,
So it will be used regardless if it's a smaller number this year and we build up to a more robust ridership in future years.
And we would work the contract out so that if, if we start with 3 kids and they decide that they don't wanna miss that 20 minutes at the beginning of the day, or they just change their mind and they say switch between Innisburg and BFA, we'll set the contract up so that we can put it well.
Okay, good, that's what my
Okay.
question is, like, what happens if it's not?
But it sounds as though it fills a needed niche.
I'm more people between my alternative programs now, like there's some richer students that are gonna be joining the STEPS program, and I'm now trying to figure out how to get them between the places.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
been our challenge, so
Great.
I know about this.
And not to mention, I would feel like, sometimes if you can add a little bit of enrollment to Richford, it would keep their programming a little more, robust. If you can, for instance, you can't run a class with 3, but you could run a class with 8, like there might be students who might, right?
Also from an equity perspective, it really allows that flexibility for ER students to make a choice between the 2 high schools, which in the past may have not been really possible. Transportation is an issue.
All right. Any more discussion? All right, so I'll make the motion, to establish, a bus route from Enosburg High School to Richford High School for the start of the 2022 academic year. By roll. Sarah? Aaron?
Aye.
Holly?
Aye.
Mary's an aye. Do we have Kat here? Oh, bravo. Okay, good stuff. Great.
Next thing is, I believe you have the SBAC results in your packet. And they're the 2021 SBAC results of all of our students. We could not report results out when there were fewer than 10 students in a class. And this assessment was taken in the spring of 2021, which was at the end of the hybrid school year, so the reporting of these results was delayed substantially.
And there's actually other considerations about these results that I just wanted to remind you about. So this was not this past spring. It was the school year that began 2 years ago, is what you're looking at now. So it was the year that we started after Labor Day, and everyone was hybrid, and they were attending school 2 days a week, and then they were remote 3 days a week. So it was that year. I know they all sort of are blending together, I think, lately for me. The Agency of Ed put out a memo when they released the results with some context and some cautions to consider when you're looking at the results. One of the big factors that caused some reliability and validity issues is that we weren't able to test all of the students who were supposed to be tested. It was very, very difficult to get all of the students into school and to test. So the participation rates were much lower than they've ever been before. And then there's one other statement that I do just want to read to you. This is a quote from the memo from the agency. It says, "We strongly recommend against comparing these results to previous years," said Wendy Geller, PhD, Director of the Data Management and Analysis Division at the Agency of Education. "Educators and families worked incredibly hard last year to minimize impacts to student learning and engagement. Despite their heroic efforts, it was not possible to conduct the smarter balance of Vermont science assessments in the same way we had previously. The extraordinary circumstances led to a range of factors that make this year's results statistically invalid when compared to previous years."
And the last thing I'd like to add is that we hope to have the data for the 21-22 school year sometime near the first of the year.
Great.
And do you think that the data that's going to be coming out at the start of the next year for the 21-22 year, do you feel like that is going to be more statistically kind of relevant and accurate than this set of numbers? I mean, it's still reflective of coming out of a fragmented educational time with COVID and a better year, but still a disrupted year in a lot of ways also with absences and sicknesses and closures and chaos and all of it.
All of that and the cumulative effects of 3 school years
Sure.
will play into the results that we get.
Yeah.
As far as participation rates go, they were higher this year than they were in the 2021 administration of the SBAC. So I'm not the data management and statistics person, so I can't tell you for sure whether they will be statistically reliable, but they definitely will be more statistically reliable than these because the participation rates on these were quite a bit lower than this year's participation rates.
Understood. Okay.
Which still were not to their pre-pandemic levels,
Right.
this year's,
Right.
but they were better.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
So one more piece of information, which is the Act 173 retired teacher legislation. So as was reported at the local school board meetings in August, we've been struggling to fill teacher vacancies in many of our schools. During this legislative session, a path was created to welcome retired teachers back to fill positions for 1 year if all other options have been exhausted. So we've had to utilize this option to fill a vacancy in FNESU.
That your wings to sainthood.
Right?
I know. You were out.
Please come back.
Okay. That's everything, eh? All right. Thank you so much. All right. So moving on to our central office updates. Dominic, you're first. Do you have anything that you'd like to highlight or add to your report?
Sure. Well, Michelle mentioned how for anyone who's not here and doesn't have a packet in front of them, doesn't see that report, so
Yeah.
I'll kind of give an overview.
Great. Thank you.
So, and I just noticed I started off with an acronym, so SLDS. For anyone who's not familiar, that's State Longitudinal Data System. So that's basically all of our state reports go through that system now. And I did the end of year DC04. That was the biggest project I've worked on since our last board meeting. It took a couple weeks or so. And I'm actually working on it again now. So the AOE kicks it back to us after they run reports and check our data against other schools. It's a collection of data. It's all of our student enrollment data, all of our staff info, attendance, grades. There's a big submission of interconnected spreadsheets. And we purchased a PowerSchool plugin that will validate our data against the state reporting requirements, which will hopefully cut down on that time frame for us moving forward, so if it can flag some of those errors for us, so our registrars can correct it before we get to the point where we submit it to the state and then have them send it back with errors. So hopefully that will help there. We also finished all of our E911 test calls for the last 2 schools that hadn't done it. So at this point, all of the FNESU schools are E911 compliant. And for anyone who's not familiar with those requirements for being compliant, it basically comes down to 1, being able to call 911 without pushing any other keys on any telephone. You normally have to push 9 or something to get an outside line. You don't have to do that for 911. And it also, when you call 911 from any phone in any of our schools, along with the address, they'll also receive the room number that you're in, so they know exactly where in the building you are. Other than that, I've mostly been doing a lot of the typical things to get ready for the new school year, ordering staff and student devices, setting up accounts, and also working on the preparations for our new office and planning the network over there, working with the electricians about, you know, where to run data cabling, where we want to have our Wi-Fi access points and that kind of stuff.
Thank you. All right, Jody?
So I wanted to give you a little more detailed information about the professional learning that happened this summer. So we had 4 main professional learning opportunities, and all 4 of them were connected to the board goals. The first one that happened was a group of middle and high school teachers and students who were an advisory work group. They attended a webinar that was presented, a multi-day webinar that was presented by the Great Schools Partnership about creating more effective and equitable advisories. And then they also worked together to create frameworks, resources, communication tools, and so on for everyone in the SU. And we also have a multi-year plan to kind of continue to engage in that work and create more resources as well next summer to follow up. So that one is really connected to the SEL, the social emotional learning board goal, and the portrait of graduate proficiency-based board goal. The next professional learning was a group of teachers who were working on proficiency-based learning. So we really went deeply into the Universal Design for Learning framework, which is the framework we use to design proficiency-based curriculum. Those teachers worked to apply that learning to their own units of instruction, and those units will be shared out as a resource for the other teachers in the supervisory union. So that one is a direct connection to the portrait of a graduate proficiency-based learning. There were about 12, I think, teachers who were in that one. The following week, we had a week-long reading institute for our kindergarten through 2nd grade teachers. That was put on by the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project of Columbia University. They are the authors of the reading program, one of the reading programs that we use. So we use a structured literacy, foundations, phonics program, and then we also use units of study as the comprehension companion. And we had about 25 teachers at that one. And then over the course of the summer, we also had 60 teachers who, special educators and classroom teachers who participated in the comprehensive reading course for educators, which is through the Stern Center. So that also, that one and the units of study are both directly connected to the early literacy board goal. So.
Is there, and so, you might have already said this, sorry, how those participants are going to spread the news basically to others?
Yes, so, yep, absolutely. The units of study and reading, those teachers all work in professional learning communities at their schools. So they'll be able to bring the learning back. We also had principals who participated in that reading institute and coaches as well. So they'll be able to bring that back to their buildings. And we also are structuring some of the learning from that institute right into our embedded professional learning throughout the year.
Oh, nice.
So they'll be, the teachers who participated will be able to, kind of help the other teachers in their grade level group, but they also will be able to go a little bit deeper with their learning at the same time, kind of extend what they learned this summer. We're also hopeful that next year we'll be able to offer that same opportunity to teachers in grades 3 through 5.
And the advisory group is going to create a bit more diverse advisory council to really work toward a universal approach to advisory in the supervisory union over this year for implementation next year. So we'll be looking for additional students and staff for that.
A couple of those groups presented at leadership yesterday as well.
They did.
Excellent. Anything else, Jody, that you'd like to highlight?
Nothing
You
else for my board
Well,
goals.
thank you, that's excellent, that's exciting, and to see how it'll kind of filter into all the buildings.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you so much. All right, so Michelle, Round two for you.
I feel like a broken record talking about the new special ed rule changes, but we continue to be working on the rule changes, and on July 1st, most of them were delayed. The one that was not delayed and became effective on July 1st was a parent input form after an IEP meeting. And the purpose of this parent input form section is to facilitate feedback from families to ensure that they've had an opportunity to express any opinions about the IEP after it's created at the meeting, if they've had a chance to reflect on the process. So getting ready to share that information with all of our special educators. We have 6 brand new special educators that have limited experience, and we have a mentoring plan between Stacy Patel-Godin and Robin and myself to help support them along the way. And something I'm really excited about that goes along with the literacy goal, board goal, is that we worked to identify a structured literacy program for the level 4 of our tier system that can be done with fidelity in small groups and in 35 minutes. So most structured literacy programs are designed for 60 to 90 minutes, and this one can be done in 35, and it's a spin-off of Orton Gillingham. As an Orton Gillingham fellow that created this program, and it's called Sunday, Sonday, and I have a select group of special educators that are going to be trained in the K-2 system and then a 3-8 system. So there'll be 2 people in each building that will be trained in this to be able to offer structured literacy to students who are still struggling. Excited about that.
Like 8-minute ads. Used to be 90 minutes.
Now it's 8.
And you can read.
And I just wanted to thank you for including the brochure or the document about the Trail House and the STEPS program. It was really helpful. It was a lot more kind of comprehensive than anything I had seen about the programs that really kind of elucidated all the kind of components of it. So it was helpful to read, and
Right, we worked on that a lot.
yeah, I can tell, and it's a pretty, I'm like, this is a phenomenal program that you all are building, and to serve the community in response to such a strong need for it. Yeah, thank you.
Still have some things to tweak on it, but
Oh, sure, always.
reassessing.
I think we're in really
Always.
good shape in comparison to our colleagues within our county and even across the state. We've had several of these programs that are going into year 2 or 3 of implementation. So I feel like we're able to meet 99.8% of all of our needs, where, you know, we're not on extensive wait lists for some of our students because we have these multiple offerings.
Right.
So
Yeah, we just recently met with our colleagues who are Connect who don't have some options like this, of like there are limited resources, limited staffing, and everyone's on wait lists to get students in certain places, and I was feeling pretty good about some of these decisions we have made. So
Yeah, it's
really
a
good for us.
great accomplishment.
I can get that transportation part figured out. that's the challenge. I'm like begging anybody to drive this van that I have. So if anybody's looking for a part-time job to drive my van, let me know.
And so just to follow that thread,
Yes.
around the van, so this is separate and distinct from this, obviously it sounds separate and distinct from the route that we just approved from Enosburg to Richburg. What would it entail, and how many students are in need of that transportation?
Well, I was just whispering to Robin, going, could that stop at Richford Elementary, and could it pick up some kids at Richford High School to bring back here? And I would put 2 staff members on my behavior
Right.
technicians on the bus to support the students between the transportation.
I mean, it's driving right by the elementary school.
And then I was thinking, we were talking about transportation for people who might wanna do a class. That might be the thing.
Right.
Right. Smaller.
So it's really excited when we expand the programs, right? And we have more students that are able to access other schools where these programs exist. But one of the challenges and barriers is that transportation piece. I
Right.
feel like we're always able to figure it out, but, you know, with the van, there's some restrictions around where you can and can't pick up students. So there are always things we can work through, but, you know, the van only holds so many kids. So when you're talking 8 or 9 kids that need to go from point A to point B, the van no longer is the best option, right? So,
Right, and having the van has allowed some opportunities for, like the TAPS students to get out to the community more and I'm hoping to expand on that opportunity, but then I'm like, all right, I look at this one van that can only do these trips. So,
So it
yeah.
seems like it's a valuable conversation to have in the future at some point, to really kind of drill down around what are our other transportation needs that aren't being met by the existing bus routes and even the new bus route, and is there some overlap? Like you said, it's driving right by the school, but it sounds like there's also a separate and distinct need.
there's some other needs that have become challenging and barriers for the programs that we have, which is, you know, I have a Sheldon student who needs to be in the middle school TAPS program and I have no way to get the student there because the van is like occupied taking several kids from Amesburg to Richford, and then how do I get the student from Sheldon to Amesburg to get onto the van? Like these little details that I'm like, I can offer great programming, but how do I get the student there?
Right.
So that's been a struggle. Still working on that.
Well, I mean, I feel like we're obligated to figure this out and budget appropriately for it, because it's not equitable to have these programs and then not have a way to help students access the programs. So, you know, it seems like maybe we need to really get clearer about, you know, how many students, what times of day, and how we make it happen with a van or taxi service or whatever, especially as we head into next round of budget planning and budget creation. Then we ought to be keeping an eye toward putting that money in the transportation budget so that all of the students can access the programs that they need.
And in theory, this is the year that we're gonna rebid the transportation contract as well. So
Yeah.
we do have an opportunity to look at those.
Great. Yeah, that seems critical to do that work.
Oh, I beg more years to help.
All right.
This caption, chat,
The transportation study include looking at any of this stuff, or was that strictly like bus routes? And I don't even remember now if that was presented at this group or the NMP group, so if it was NMP, never mind.
That study really looked at to and from school routes. So looking for efficient. It didn't really.
Sort of like standard routes.
Right. It didn't really look at any transportation for these special programs. It was more about the regular elementary and high school routes we have, trying to expand those to give greater access to Richford. It did look at potentially pre-K routes as well as after-school routes.
Okay, thank you, I just wanted to remember.
All right, well, so to be continued for sure around this. Let's keep moving forward with the discussion and kind of understanding the budget implications and how we would make that a reality. 'Cause it doesn't seem optional to me.
I mean, unless, for instance, I feel like it definitely is a deep dive into the questions, like for instance, is there a program in their current place that might, you know, is it just anybody who says, I want to go here, therefore get me a bus. I don't know, there's
Right.
so I feel like it's a definite conversation that we should be having. But I feel like there's probably a lot missing, but I don't know.
I mean, but it seems like, you know, what Michelle and Robin are saying is that they're very aware of the students for whom this is like, that this is requisite. So I'm not, you know, sure, you know, there's probably other people that, given their druthers, might wanna pick and choose to be, but these are the students for whom it's absolutely critical and they can't access services that we are required.
Right, it's
They
part
just
of the
provide
IEP.
that.
It's part of the, it's their least restrictive environment, therefore we are required.
Right, like, so that's the population I'm talking
Yeah, no,
about,
for
I'm
sure.
not talking about everyone deciding that they wanna like,
No, I got you.
And
yeah,
we're in a bit of a transition here now because pre-COVID, we were sending this clientele out to a bunch of different
Right.
sites, and so it was taxis or it was reimbursing mileage for that. And now that we're able to create those in-house, we're kind of making the transition of transportation as well.
I just was saying, like, we should
Yeah.
just look at all the pieces.
Of
but
course.
Yeah.
well, and so maybe we could say that, maybe not for September, but maybe for October's meeting. Morgan, remind me when we're gonna start kind of diving into budget stuff, not October, eh?
We will do it really November. In the past, we've touched on special ed in October because we had a budget report to the state that was due mid-October.
Yeah,
I don't even know if we have to do that anymore, to be honest with you, with the new changes in funding, so. But November will be your first real look at the SU budget as a whole.
so maybe for October's meeting, if you all wanted to present to the board, you know, how many students we're talking about, where they live, where they need to get, what the times would be, how many, so that when it comes time in November, we could be bearing that in mind for budget work.
Thank you.
Alright, cool. Okay, so Michelle, Irish, you are up.
Yeah, sure. So this is a long, kind of beefy, report. It's been a busy summer, so I'll try to do some summarizing. So the first thing I have on here is around the portrait of a graduate, and I don't remember if we had this conversation yet or not, but I don't think so. When we were in Washington at the Learning 2025 conference, we saw some schools that are actually using the terminology portrait of a learner, and we're really excited about that idea of that shift in language because it really helps us look at a pre-K to 12 system as opposed to just a high school focused system, which when you hear the word graduate, people tend to think about just high school. So we probably will be asking to shift that language to portrait of a learner. We've started to use it as we've been presenting to people, and it's landing pretty well. So I think that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind and be watching for. This year we'll be developing an implementation team with representation from both the middle high schools and the NMB schools to work on what the next steps are around transitioning to that. So in May, the board approved or adopted, I think it was May, the portrait of a learner model. And we talked about the current 8th graders being the first graduates who will graduate under the portrait of a learner as graduation requirements. So we need to start looking at how we're going to collect those proficiencies with the 7 characteristics as we move forward. So that'll happen this year. Another piece, and I think Jody touched on it a little bit, was we've started doing some work with a program called Up for Learning around youth adult partnerships. We had our kickoff retreat in June. There's a lovely little picture of our team there. We had a lovely representation of really a lot of middle school students. And I think everyone who participated will agree with me that they were phenomenal to work with. The students had lots to say. They were really engaged. One of them continued on the following week, or a few weeks later, with our advisory work, and she was the only student that participated in this webinar. It was a national webinar, and everybody there was thrilled to have her and really excited about her participation. So we had a blast. we are now working toward, we've built sort of 3 different pathways. One of them, and they're kind of tied to the board goals. So one of them is around advisory. So we'll have opportunities for youth and adults to work on that, building that advisory system. The second is around really getting the word out around Portrait of a Graduate. So a communication, Portrait of a Learner, the communication strategy to get the information to students, to faculty, and to the community, so families especially, around this shift. So that'll be more of a communication group. And then the third group wants to work on building a culture of belonging. And so they have a lot of ideas around things they can do at the school level. Obviously, advisory also contributes to that, but it's kind of its own separate thing. So that was really fun and busy. And then the last couple things they have were around some of the audits we've been working on. So the equity audit we're doing with the Insight Education Group is entering sort of the final turn. If you look at the pathway we have there and the picture, we're going to be doing stakeholder focus groups this September, October. There'll be some interviews that happen, probably with board chairs, with the superintendent, and then they'll be doing the project analysis and expect a final report around early December. Originally it was December 1st. We've sort of pushed the stakeholder groups back a little bit just so we can get into the start of the year and let kids and staff kind of get their feet wet. But that would be, we're looking for that final report from them December 1st-ish. And then we're continuing our work that we started last year with the hidden curriculum audit. The hidden curriculum is really about our culture. So we have our, articulated curriculum that the curriculum team has worked on is on our website. The hidden curriculum is really about exploring the culture of our schools, how it feels to be in our schools. And so we have teams, representatives from every school, at least 2 people, who are going to facilitate conversations with their faculty, looking at norms, values, and accountability for staff, rules and expectations for students, and relevance in multiple perspectives are the 3 areas we chose to look at this year. So we'll be collecting that data over the course of the year, analyzing it in probably May, and then making some plans for next year.
Great.
I have a question. Michelle, do you anticipate us inviting students to join our boards?
That's a question for the board for sure. But it is something that I think I would love to see us inviting student representation at all levels of the work we're doing. Students are our consumers. We feel like in order to have them really engaged, they need to be part of the work and part of the planning. And they've proven to us they want to be, and B, they can. So
We have had FNESU
I thought so.
Or student representatives to the FNESU board in the past.
I think
There used to be 2 of them,
Mhm.
probably 8 years ago. 9
There were,
years ago.
and there were at the state level too. I don't know if there still are, but usually it was a junior and a senior.
There still are, on the state board, there are 2.
Yeah. There's some logistics we have to figure out, and Lynn was starting to work on what those logistics were regarding residency. So for NMB representation, do they have to live in one of the towns? If they're an NMB member but they go to Enosburg High School, which how do they serve on the board? Those kinds of things. But those are I think it's worth exploring, and I think that's something we've started to kind of talk about.
Yeah, we have started to talk about it at the board retreat, and it is on kind of our agenda for our next one of the upcoming retreats, to circle back to what it would look like, how we would put it into action, and some of those kind of logistics around it. But it's certainly, I think we all seem to recognize the importance and the value of having those voices at the table.
Speaking of the board retreat, I didn't add that to my report. Is that something you want to talk about as an activity that we've done, or I'm happy to give some makeup. I don't know. I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know there were a few people who weren't able to make it, but we did have a board retreat focused on the work of developing an equity statement from the board. We started in, oh gosh, it seems like forever ago, but I think it was early August, late July. We got partway through our schedule of events, and really I think the idea was that the board felt like it might be better to have more full representation and invitation from all of the board members, from both the districts and the SU participating in that, because it was something that we felt like the professional learning was important, and the collection of the ideas was really important to have a broader representation. So we would talk about some future retreats that we'd like to have everyone invited to. So we have a place to start when we get back together. But that work is, I think, ongoing, and I'm looking forward to. I think our schools are really wanting that equity statement. It helps them lean on what our values are here, and when they see things, they can say, "This isn't part of our value," and it's easier to interrupt and respond to things that happen when you've got a strong equity statement.
Great. Thanks so much, Michelle. Jamie, do you have anything you want to highlight from your report?
So as Michelle said earlier, we've had a lot of new staff. So I've been spending the summer with the new hires. So we've hired 54 new professional staff members and 26 new support staff at this time. And we have 22 professional openings still out there and 20 support staff openings, so we still have a ways to go. And I've also been working on licensing, so we had 72 renewals that were going on this summer, trying to make sure they have all been finished. And the AOE extended everyone's licenses till October 31st instead of June 30th, so that helped a little bit. And I've requested 22 provisional licenses this summer and 14 emergency licenses at this time, so that's been busy. My report. So that's the majority of the summer.
Sounds like a busy one.
So I meet in person with each new hire, so that's about an hour apiece.
Yeah.
Take some time.
That's a heavy lift. Thank you. Appreciate all of that. I know it's a lot right now. All right, thanks so much. Heather.
Hi. Yeah, so a couple of things from my board notes. First is wanted to share with the board and others, every June we do a report to the Agency of Education about our student participation, what kind of activities we're offering. And some of the feedback we got, it was all very positive, but was amazement, and they were impressed by the size and scope of our programs. We're pretty much at pre-pandemic levels, where some of the states are still actually virtual last school year. So like the staff just did a tremendous amount of work, and we had so much support from the boards and from communities, and we made this happen for students and families. They also, the AOE was really excited about the connection of our program with the pandemic response plan from the SU and the ESSER fund allocations that made our summer program be able to be expanded. And we served about 100 more youth this summer than we did before the pandemic. So again, like, our programs are growing, they're expanding, and they're vibrant. So yeah, with all of that, like, the students were very engaged all summer. Went to multiple sites multiple times, and they're just like in there. Their hands are messy. They're having fun. They're going home telling their families about things they've learned, exploring our communities. So it's been a really successful summer. And as Michelle said, we have all of our site coordinators have been hired, because we have 2 vacant positions. But I've been meeting with both coordinators, they're really excited and ready to go and have lots of fresh ideas. We'll be starting our after-school program on September 19th. Morning programs for the sites that have them, which are Bakersfield, Berkshire, Montgomery, and Richford Elementary. Those start on the first day of programming. So registration forms and communication will be going out to families shortly for those sites. And something that's just like not in the board notes, but along with our reporting with the AOE, I've actually kind of created a continuous improvement plan template for LEAPs, so that we can track some of this AOE feedback from year to year and kind of see the forward motion of our programs, so we can just keep things moving forward.
Thanks, that's great, Heather. Appreciate it. All right, Dawn.
So we're winding down from our summer feeding programs that we ran this summer. We did partner with Notch again to provide meals for their Richford site and their Swanton site. So Richford came out of Richford High School, Swanton came out of Enosburg. Once again, Enosburg was a huge site just because they satellited out into many other sites for us. FFVP grants have been submitted for the schools that are eligible and have been approved for those 3 sites. We're waiting for eligibility for the rest of the elementary schools so that we can submit them for that. I've got them all ready to go, so as soon as the state opens that up, we can just submit them and get them approved as quickly as possible. Staff are gearing up to start feeding kids in the cafeteria in all of our schools, which is a huge thing because that's the one thing that food service staff have missed a lot, is to see and have the interaction with the kids. And I think that's really important for the kids as well, to come to the cafeteria and interact and just kind of have that moment where they can be a kid. So then I did a grant, a 50-50 state match grant. We were awarded that for an elementary freezer condenser, and that work is being held back a little bit. That's gonna get done during October, hopefully. Been having a lot of issues getting parts and labor, getting someone here to work on that, just because as it is, they have a lot of not being able to hire the help that they need. So then back in April, I was granted a full federal grant for a Richford Elementary compressor and condenser, so that's been done and that's up and running now. So as we get this new refrigeration in, it's a big plus because then we stop having coolers and freezers that go down in the summertime with the heat and whatnot. We did just end up having one that went down over the weekend, so that creates issues. Then I just want to put a shout out to you guys for hiring Vern, because he has been a huge success to me to get these grants, because now I don't have to go out and find these quotes. I just tell him I need quotes for this, this, and this. He gets it. I submit the grant and we work together to get those grants, so it's been nice. Kitchen staff, they have had this week off at most sites. Enosburg site's the only site where I've had some working during the week for different things. We are pulling them in on August 22nd and 23rd for some training that we are mandated that we have to do through food service, so we'll get that done. Then we'll be ready to get kitchen stocked up and rolling for the 31st.
Awesome. Thanks, Dawn, that's fantastic.
Oh, I have a question. The letter that went home today, is it about the free and reduced lunch letter?
Mhm.
Did I see that there was a due date by the 19th on there?
If your student was not enrolled in our schools, so it's
Yeah.
basically if there's a student that now is going to be enrolled in one of our schools that was not enrolled in our school in June, we don't have any information on that student to submit that name to the state to get them that state benefit. If your kids were enrolled in our school, then they are already put down as getting the summer benefit, because all of our schools are either CEP or provisions too. So
I was
they're all
like,
free.
2 days. I was like, how am I gonna get it done in 2 days?
And it is, but actually it's kind of working in our favor because we did have some schools that emailed it out and some of these parents are really sending them back. So we are going as a provisions 2 base year this year for Montgomery Elementary and for Enosburg High School, middle high school. So it's really important that those 2 sites, we get those applications back.
Yeah.
So the rest of the schools, I mean, all of the meals are free regardless of anything, because we are all provisions 2 and CP and we have the universal meals program.
Right.
But we are trying to make it so that we are using the federal piece of it as much as we can.
And Dawn, that additional state EBT benefit, you said it's only, people will get it, families will get it even if they don't get it in by the 19th, if they're already in the system.
If they're already enrolled in our school in
Okay.
June of 2022.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Great, thank you. All right, Melissa.
Okay, one thing that I'd like to point out is, last year, for this year, we adjusted some of the preschool sessions, to meet the needs of children, and we've actually found that we've increased our number of 10-hour slots significantly. For example, in one school, we can have up to 26 3-year-olds, not necessarily at the same time, or in the same classroom, and that school previously had 0 10-hour slots. So we've really expanded there. As well, in another school, we were able to expand by about 15 slots for 3-year-olds, for 10 hours. So that's really great, and that was not at the expense of 4-year-olds, so we didn't have to lose anything for that. So that's really, really exciting. I don't have registered numbers yet, but I do know from numbers that I saw initially when we did screenings, the 3-year-olds did, the 3-year-old numbers did go beyond what we would have been able to afford with the sessions that we previously had. So I know that we've gotten some extra kids in our programs, which is fantastic. Over the summer, I had some of my early educators come together and we drafted priority standards for pre-K using the Vermont Early Learning Standards, and we crosswalked that with TS Gold where we put in our data so we can track progress. And with that, we are going to be introducing 2 curriculums this year to focus on social emotional development and other early learning domains, while also allowing time for learning through play, which we know in early ed, children learn best through play. So these curriculums really balance that learning and engagement for children. Let's see, another shout out to Vern. We did have some early ed grant money, and I met with each school principal and really was able to look at the needs and tailor that, whether it was new floors. At one school, we installed a sidewalk for accessibility. We upgraded some fences for safety. So those were some pretty big projects, and again, it's Vern having the knowledge and the resources to say, hey, I'm thinking about this at this school, what can we do? And he's like, I'm on it. So that's really fantastic. And then the biggest thing one of the biggest things we're working on this year is the early ed leadership team, where we'll be looking at strategic planning. So last year and this year, we're really looking at the early multi-tiered systems through the pyramid model. And beyond that, we just want to keep the ball rolling and make sure that our early ed program is high quality and maintains that.
Thanks so much.
For those of you that work at central office, which is most of you, we will not let Vern know about this because
It'll go to his head.
yes. We'll keep these shout outs. Just kidding.
All right, Robin, you're out.
So we have 3 ALIS trainings scheduled for this month, for all of our new hires, for any of our staff that were hired after the start of the school year last year. and all of our new support staff, along with any substitutes that work in any of our buildings. So we will be training approximately 150 people over the next couple of weeks. Alice is the active shooter options-based response training that empowers staff to make survival decisions. The training includes a 1-hour verbal followed by a 2-hour tactical so that adults can practice the different strategies. That is led by myself and supported by either one or both of our school resource officers throughout our district. In addition to that, all of our staff across the SU, from food service to custodial staff to teachers to paras, they all participate in a 1-hour online course called Alice for Workplace. Many of the building principals are allotting a 1-hour time frame for that to occur during their local in-service days that are coming up this month. And our goal for that is 100% completion. We've met that goal in the past, so I'm confident we can meet it again. I've been working with building principals to ensure that the requirements are met in regards to the number of fire evacuation drills and the number of options-based response to active shooter drills that need to occur throughout the school year. Pre-pandemic, we created calendars which were really explicit on what months targeted what strategies for supporting those drills with students in the schools. So I'll be working to create something similar so that we're consistent across all of our schools in that regard. And it has a pretty good number of resources that are available for both the building administrators and the teachers. There's some really solid curriculum that's released, that was released over the summer that I'm excited to be able to share so that teachers have access to that and they can utilize it however they feel is needed within their building. The last thing that we have going on this month pretty intensely is we've scheduled several Handle with Care trainings. Handle with Care teaches staff to develop and use management and relationship skills to reduce tension and create and maintain a calm and safe environment for all. So it really supports our verbal and physical intervention that we utilize if it's needed in the schools. Our district has 4 trainers, myself, Heather Hawkins, Jeremy Sanborn, and Ashley Irish. And we're fortunate to be able to differentiate the trainings based on whether it's a new staff experiencing this for the first time, whether it's someone that's in their second year, or we have some staff that have done it 3, 4, 10 years. So we really differentiate to meet the needs so that we know time is really valuable. So we really don't want someone sitting through an 8-hour training if it's something that we can complete within a 3.5, 4-hour time frame. And I'll just give a shout out to several of the principals that are very accommodating in allowing us to use their buildings for a lot of these trainings. So, we use Cold Hollow for our Alice Tactical, we use Enosburg Elementary, the gymnasium for a lot of our Handle with Care, just because they're very appropriate settings to do this. So it does require some of the staff to need to be flexible, but they do it graciously, and it is very much appreciated. So a lot going on with school safety at the start of the year, but
Yeah. Thank you so much, Robin. All right, Gabby.
I guess just highlight that the Messenger did that nice article about Harley Bennett. If there's any questions, I think you need to take action on the handbook.
I have a question actually. With the statistic 62%.
Yeah.
Is there a way to tease that out? I was kind of curious.
I have all the scores.
To tease it out, I guess even just like by grade level as far as like data, like out of 62%, like how many are near, how many are above?
I could,
All that
yeah.
stuff, yeah.
I would have to go back and look. The grade levels are really small,
Yeah.
so it's not very helpful to look at like the 3 kindergartners.
Okay,
or
that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
So maybe
I
even
kinda,
out
like-
of that 62%,
the K2, the.
Yeah, or even out of the 62%,
The numbers
how
are just
many
really
of them
small.
And just a
So-
reminder, we can't report if the group is fewer than 10.
Well, I mean, for instance, this is supposed to be like a pilot program, so I feel like the amount of like data that we can provide that says out of 62%, the majority of
We
the kids are
certainly-
above,
yeah,
or
we
are the
certainly
majority of kids
could-
below,
We
right?
could certainly find, you have that
Yeah.
data.
Yeah.
I didn't put it in the report, I was trying to be,
No,
there's lots of.
Which is great. Normally I would
We did star, 3 times, just
Yeah.
like everybody else, and then we've got the literacy teacher doing F&P stuff.
Yeah,
Using-
I think that's what it was the F&P.
Yeah, so I just put the reading ones in there because of the board reading goal,
Yeah.
so that we can kind of track where that's going.
Yeah, perfect.
I can certainly get more if you want specific information.
Yeah, maybe on the next meeting, just bring maybe like more specifics.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Sure.
Thank you.
So Holly, are you really looking for the breakdown between approaching at
Yeah.
or above, so that you disaggregate that number?
That number. For instance, like I said, if you have 62%,
Right.
is it the
Or 40% approaching and the rest are
or
at
is it
and above?
overwhelmingly they're above?
So
Like what's
the F&P is, the other thing about the F&P scores is there's a range.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you're kind of like, it's a range this way and this way. And it's
Right.
kind of, yeah, I'll see if I can tease it out a little bit.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Are you interested in other math and?
That would be great, like those specifics would be great, just so that we could put a finger on to say, here's the data to support the programming, I think would be helpful.
These enrollment numbers are probably not accurate. I think we're up to 20 high schoolers. And in the master's schedule, I guess I would just note that we added time we separated out the reading a little bit, so foundations is a little bit algebra work in there. And then units of study has a separate time, so and it's a little more fluid, so kids can move between the groups throughout. And then adding some face-to-face stuff this year, so we have face-to-face orientation right here in the library on Friday the 26th. PE is going to do monthly face-to-face events. We have, this is not face-to-face, but lunch for the professionals every month. Our first one is with a Pixar movie animator. And then we have some tentative field trips. So trying to add some, now that we can be closer,
Yeah.
trying to add some of that into the program.
Nice.
And Gabby, you mentioned the handbook, which is excellent, by the way. It was really nice to see all of that. It doesn't specify in your report that you need a motion, but is this an action item needing to be approved by the board?
I thought that handbooks did have to be approved by the board. I didn't know that I needed to put it in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, by roll, Kat? Great. Sarah? Erin?
Aye.
Polly?
Aye.
Mary's an aye.
And then I don't know Vern, but I know Dominic, and I have some very weird requests for Dominic for a very small number of kids and a lot of technology, and so just shout out to my building person, because I don't have a tech person, and and I'm not a tech person, so thank you, Dominic. And Morgan also gets some weird requests from
Morgan gets weird requests from everybody.
And I'm terrible at work, so.
All right, awesome, thanks Gabby. That's great. And so we don't have Vern here, I don't see a report from him, although he did come to our NMB meeting, I assume he came to the ER meeting, so.
I think that makes more sense because it's
Yeah.
school specific,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
can
No, that makes sense, for sure.
we'll probably make the local rounds again sometime during the budget season.
Yeah.
And then again in spring or summer.
Great, great. All right, so then we're moving on to our board business. Anyone have a future agenda item they are aware of in the moment? I mean, we highlighted this transportation issue, which I think we'll set for the October meeting. Anything?
For under board business?
Yeah, for future agenda items. I mean, there's always time
Yeah.
to come up with things.
Did we nail down the time? Meeting time?
Oh, right, so we had a little bit of confusion around the meeting time being 6 tonight. And Morgan double checked the minutes and we did say 6. Which also surprised me because prior it had been 6:30. So I just wanted to kind of get a sense from everyone whether we feel good about 6 or do we wish it was 6:30.
I mean, I'm shocked because first of all, I am fine with 6, but I know I'm completely understandable to people who 6 is a struggle. So I am flexible. I'll show up at 6:30. But we voted on that like right at the end of the year, didn't we?
When we reorganized.
Because I was so annoyed. I was annoyed because I was like, oh my god, 6:30, we're never gonna get out of there. I remember thinking that. But then, so when did we change it?
At your May 16th meeting.
Are you sure we didn't do that for the ER board? Because we did that for the ER board because Devin couldn't make it for 5:30. We moved it to 6 because she couldn't make it in time.
How spectacular would it be if all 3 meetings were at the same time?
No, I mean, I'm with you on that one.
NSB is at 6:30.
I'm
That's what
with you
we
on that
decided.
But I usually remember that stuff, but.
So would you prefer to keep it at 6?
I mean, 6 is kind of good for me, but I am totally fine doing 6:30.
Sarah, Aaron?
I would 6.
6 works?
Yes.
It's not stressful?
It's more stressful when we're getting out at 9:30.
Yes.
All right, I'm seeing mostly nods from everyone that 6 works? Okay, so we're all good.
Good. But I am shocked that happened. How did I fall asleep on that one?
All right, so next up is the superintendent evaluation, which we are going to do, but that's gonna be an executive session. So that said, I think that we can excuse everyone. And I'm gonna make a motion, and I don't feel like you all need to hang around to come back post-executive session. Right?
Right now.
So I'll make the motion to enter executive. Pat?
Alright,
Sarah?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Polly? And Mary is an aye.
Do I have the Zoom to bring Pat in?
So, you guys are in executive session.
Yeah.
Thank you.